Welcome back to the channel. This is OncaEngineering and I'm Herman Wiegman. And today is part 2 of the Y-pipe exchange, where we take out the old and we stick in the new. Welcome to part 2 of this Y-pipe upgrade video series. In this installment, we'll be removing and inspecting the old parts as they come off the engine. We'll be installing a new supercharger coupler, and we'll review the tools needed to do this work. This video is over 30 minutes long, so hang in there. And I also am sorry for delaying this content. I was on a business trip and wasn't able to publish it last week. I understand some of you are doing this job concurrently with me, so let's see if we can learn from each other. All right, let's get rolling. I did remove this pipe which goes to the throttle body, and it has this large element with electrical connector tied to it, and it then went into this side fitting on the side. I don't think I necessarily needed to remove this, but disconnecting these and getting this valve out of the way did give me better access to the high pressure fuel line so that could be removed. So I think it was worth it. I'll put this on the shelf and just remind myself that these two connections and this one goes here. These are the two coolant lines, and here in the back we have this pneumatic line which goes around the engine. This end does connect to the supercharger on a feed pipe here, and this is the symposer portion. It's a small feed that goes off to the pneumatic valve of the symposer. I'll probably blank that off because I don't want to run the symposer anymore. And then this one connects to the other side of the engine. I have one more element to show here. It's the left-hand side positive crankcase ventilation, which has its access to the engine there, and it comes right by and goes to the intake manifold. So that pipe was also removed for convenience. This is the wire connector that goes to a clip here below, and it is a squeezy. You have to squeeze and then pull. Looking here at this rear bracket, this has been bent upward. I was able to bend it up and out of the way a little bit to help with the removal of the supercharger. There's also screws here and on the other side. They are T27s, and if you go underneath the wiring harness to get at those do come off. Yeah, the symposer pipe. It's this rather ungainly pipe that goes all the way into the firewall back here. Very deep. It's practically inside the car. So that will come off. I'm going to delete that. I do want to point out this little access cap right here. It looks like it's a 5mm Allen key. When you remove that, you have access to the gear set. The supercharger gears are back here, and they mesh in this region here. And so this is for the supercharger oil. Some kits, you actually suck the oil out from this hole, and then you can insert your new oil into this hole. I think that's pretty slick, pretty clever. So that's what that's for. Okay, now we're on the right-hand side of the car, looking back here by the symposer. There it is. All right, so there is a screw down there with another bracket, and that goes to the supercharger, so that one has to come off. Otherwise, this here, if I shine the camera on it, this also needs to come off. This is the tube. Here we are on the right-hand side of the engine towards the rear. I was able to take off the symposer pipe. Had two long T27 or T30 bolts, and this is the hole that the Symposer picks its noise up from. Now I don't want this pipe anymore. I'll be blanking off the Symposer port. So to gain access to this screw back here, I'm going to just cut this pipe right off. It's plastic, and it's gone. Have I said it yet? But this is my favorite tool. It's a micro ratchet, and the handle goes any which way. Oh. So this is a T30 bit and a 1/4 inch socket on my 1/4 inch drive wrench. It's going to help me to get in on that T30. You can't see because I'm not pointing. There it is, right there. Let's see how it goes. So everything's off the back, and throttle body's the last thing before we pull the supercharger off the engine. Now I just pulled out some of these bolts from the throttle body, and the bolt itself is not that impressive, but the captive hardware is really nice. It has a force spreading collar, and it has a rubber isolated donut at the end. So probably to isolate noise, but this is hard bolted, coupled. No, it's a soft coupling to the engine. Interesting. To keep the vibration down on this element. Either way, very nice hardware. I'm noticing a few things right off the bat. These are rusty, these are not. Same on the other side. Totally gone, and okay. So I've got these maybe just in the nick of time. I'll probably have to grind that all the way off. The reason why that's rusty is because of this. I put a sound insulation material between the supercharger and the, I'll call it the cam cover, and that retains moisture and rusts out those bolts. So this car is mostly garaged and it's rusted out. That's a shame. 36,000 miles. Oh boy. All right, it is what it is. And of course here we have Mouse Hotel. Lots to clean up. But I'm amazed, this whole section of the engine is essentially open to the elements. The supercharger sits in the V, but there's nothing preventing rainwater or everything else from collecting in here. And I'm sure it just loads up and collects in the back. Yeah, there's no drain holes down there, nope. Boy, so, and there's another piece of plastic. Oh boy. All right, let's get stuck in. While I'm in here, I have a funny story. I'm just going to point out, well, first off, this is the Y-pipe. That's the whole reason why we're in here. And this is the welded Y-pipe that's prone to failure, particularly in these two joints down here. And that's the whole reason why we're in here, because this pipe fails and then you have a coolant leak and you overheat your engine. But I'm just looking at these two, bank 1 and bank 2, the NOx sensors, and this wire harness goes over to here, which then goes to the rest of the car. And when I was doing my clutch job, I unclipped this harness, which goes to these two NOx sensors, and I started the car. It ran fine, but it would never rev higher than 3,000 RPM. So it felt beautiful up to 3,000, and all of a sudden it would just stop accelerating. Very disturbing. And I lent the car to a friend, and I said, oh sure, take it for a drive, check it out. And they had a great time, and they came back, and I then said, man, this car's acting funny. Was it because I lent it to my friend? No, it's because the day before I finished my clutch job and I forgot to reconnect my NOx sensors. So without the signal, without the NOx sensors, the car doesn't rev past 3,000 RPM. I thought I would just take a moment to highlight the Symposer, a work of art. Now I cut it off here with a knife. You can see that. Well, not with a knife, with a hacksaw blade. But this is where the sound from the engine, or at least 3 cylinders, from that intake plenum would go into this device, through this resonant chamber, and into this pneumatic switch, which is pneumatically actuated, but it is electrically fired. So you have an electrical signal that turns on a pneumatic signal that then allows the sound to come from the engine to the car. Oh, what a work of junk. I'm sorry, but this thing is leaving the premises. Now, before I throw this Symposer across the yard, I do want to flip it around backwards and show you where this bracket is, where there's 1, 2, 3. These 3 points tie to the backside of the supercharger, and those are the 3 bolts that have to come out. All right, let's take a look at the intake runners. That's not so bad. And now the other side. This is the left-hand side of car, left rear, left middle, and left front with the valves open. Check that out. All right, I better stick this full of cloth so that nothing falls in there. Just taking a look at all the belts. I took off the supercharger belt, which goes from the crank around these idler pulleys up over the supercharger, which is in this region, over these idlers. Basically, it resides on the the right-hand side of the car, or on the left here, looking from the front. The second belt, though, of interest is the water auxiliary pump. This is the water pump, and the belt goes all over the freaking place. Whoops, get back there. So I'll draw a little map, draw all the main pulleys, and try to route this on a piece of paper first, see if it makes sense. And here we go with a map of what all the belts are doing. I am sure I can find this in part of the Jaguar literature, just that I'd rather document what's in front of me instead of always relying upon what might be published. That's it. Okay. I'm going to try to attack the front section, make a decision whether I change the water pump or not. This one appears to be fine, but I do want to change out the thermostat housing, which I believe goes in like so, to the water pump, up to the engine or the supercharger, and then the down pipe to the radiator, and of course the metal clip here too. Lots of decisions, but this part is buried in there, and we have an awful lot of hose clamps to get off, a lot of wiring clamps, and it's cold, and so I'm worried about brittleness. So let's see if we can get this part out. This is still the thermostat housing here, but there's a bunch of connections going to the front of the camshafts here, position sensors or actuators. There's a bunch of stuff, but that I don't need to touch. It's only the wire that comes around this thermostat housing that I have to worry about. So I'll try getting those off, and then maybe we can get the thermostat out. The hose clamp at the bottom is going to be real difficult to get off. I might want to cut that. All right, let's keep going. I am looking to take the water pump off. It has 2 screws on the right and 2 screws on the left. Unfortunately, the screw on the left is back behind this tensioner. So we're going to have to take the tensioner arm off to get at that one. The tensioner was pretty easy to take out. That was actually just 1 bolt. And here's the water pump bolts now. Let's go. Well, I was able to get the water pump off. That gives us access to this connector pipe, clean up all this, and it might give us a little more room to get the thermostat housing out. All right, let's keep cracking on. Okay, we're trying to get the thermostat bracket off, and it's held on by that down here. It's a T30. I have to go in underneath these bars. It's a little bit of a pain in the ass, but we'll get it. I just noticed something about the thermostat housing. The lower pipe has this clip-on fitting with probably a snap ring or something. It's a little bit different than the others, which have the ridge. And sure enough, looking at the thermostat housing, I find myself a nice little spring that releases, and now I think I can pull it out. We'll find out. Let me get 2 hands on it. Moving on to the back side of the engine now. I'll start with this bracket, which is now just holding the NOx sensor wires and something else. This bracket connects to the back of the charge air cooler, but it also attaches to this plastic protection for the wire harness back here. This is held onto the crossover pipe, which needs to come off. So we have to disconnect this bundle of wires. And anything else? Yeah, one connector down here. Must be some kind of crossover pipe valve or something. Alright, let's get stuck in. Yay, I was able to get the last bolt out on the bottom. It was up against the block here. Really difficult to get to. I had to run my wrench way out far because of these obstructions, but I got it out, the last one. Alright, that means this thing should come off. Yes. How does it come out of there? And it comes out. Yay. The crossover pipe with various electrical connectors, water takeoffs. This goes to the heater core on the inside of the car. Alright. Okay, let's take a peek at the pieces that have come off the car. This is obviously the crossover pipe in the rear of the engine, where this tube here goes to the throttle body with the hose that gets clipped to the bottom of the supercharger. And this hose goes to the interior. It's a simple release. In the bottom there is a electronic control for the throttle body coolant line. This piece is not bad, and for my car it's actually in pretty good shape. I don't see much corrosion. The rubber gaskets were still in reasonable condition. Those go in here. So am I glad I took it off? Yeah. Was it hard to take off? Kinda. Getting at these bottom bolts here were pretty difficult. Alright, so this is going to be replaced with the new metal part. It wasn't faulty, but it's going to get exchanged. This hose here goes between the thermostat housing and the supercharger. Was it difficult to get off? Absolutely. Is it basically the same as the replacement part? Yep. Is it in good shape? Yep. Am I going to replace it? Yep. Because I can, and because this one is somewhat aged. The rubber is starting to show some bloating or some stretch as the rubber becomes pliable and then it starts to weaken, and it's supposed to be strengthened by the fabric on the inside, but it's going to get changed. Here's the water pump. This is pretty good shape. Feels good. No obvious signs of leakage. Yeah, this is a good water pump. It has the same feature where the outside edge here is machined. I believe that was maybe to clear the block. Otherwise, I had tough time getting the hoses off. You see, this is scratched up here now because my pick was in there trying to loosen up the rubber hose from the metal water pump. Now I do see a line of rubber here right on the edge of the lips. That's really the sealing lip. That tells you that that's really where the pressurized water is stopped and is not allowed to escape. So either way, I got a good water pump. I'll keep it, but it's going to get exchanged. Here's the dreaded Y-pipe. This is the one that's plastic welded. Actually, it's not welded. I believe this to be plastic bonded, some type of glue. It's not showing any fatigue cracking, and it also cracks down here. And I'm not seeing any cracking in this region. It still feels pretty good. I took off the rubber O-rings. They had collected some corrosion, but again, they're somewhat crushed, so I won't reuse these. So is this piece being replaced? Absolutely. but it has all these funky connections and plastic tabs holding on all these little joints. So that's nice to see that the new metal parts are simplified. All right, this one's going. Thermostat housing. This one still appears to be in pretty good condition. It wasn't under any mechanical stress, but it does go through thermal cycling. But otherwise, it's in pretty good shape. It was really difficult to get off. You really had to be aware of this retaining clip to remove that, and then you could pull off the bottom hose, which stays with the radiator in the car. All right, this one's going to get replaced. I have to keep the clip though. This hose is not in the kit, but I'm thinking I might want to purchase one. I was able to get this the clamps off, but this hose is showing bloating, is starting to show stretch. So it's starting to show its age. So in that sense, this one should be replaced. All right. And all the other related hardware, most notably were the valve cover or cam cover gasket or cover bolts with these captive hardware. What I did was I went to the store and bought new hardware, M6 1.0 thread, 30 millimeter long, and it's a great replacement for these bolts with the rusted heads. Okay, these are 10 millimeter, which is nice, easy to grab onto. And the last piece I have here of interest is the coupling pipe between the water pump and the inner heat exchanger on the top of the engine. This does have two rubber gaskets. The gaskets are bidirectional. I don't think you can get those screwed up. Slight non-uniformity. Maybe there is one way to stick it in, not the other. But I'll look at the new gasket, see if it's bidirectional. All right, this will be replaced with a new metal part. There you go. Quick summary of all the big pieces that have been taken out of the car. All right, the supercharger was also removed. There's nothing fundamentally to change here besides the coupler, which is in here. And so I'll take that out because the old coupler has obviously a fair amount of backlash, and the spring, I don't know, I just don't like that. I'd rather go with a solid coupler. Taking off this front portion, the bypass valve will probably need to stay on the supercharger because otherwise I have to take these screws off, take this whole assembly apart. I would hate to lose alignment on all that. So I'll try to take the front off without taking this off. I think I can do that. Okay, here we are on the supercharger job. I did have to take a pry bar and give it a pretty good lever to pop off the front housing. Yep, there it is. You can see the evidence of the black RTV squeezed out. So I'll reapply that. And there's our coupler. Must be a bearing. Greased bearings. Okay. This coupler does not look broken. It just looks like the spring has some slop in it. But there's different plastics, different thicknesses, almost like a keyway there hiding out. Ooh, a little rusty and scored up. What would have done that? What's on this side? Oh, a center pin. Oh, there. Oh, yeah. Okay. I see what's going on here. The spring wraps around this center pin and there's a friction. And they should have put the grease in there. They did not. They put the grease down in there. You should have greased this one up. That's what could cause this to fail pretty dramatically. And it looks like that pin is all worn out from friction. Yeah, that's no bueno. Getting rid of that's a good idea. So, out with the old and with the new. I thought I'd take a pause to let my hands heal. They took a lot of abuse. I'm just going to go over some of the tools that I've used for this job. Nothing too outrageous, your standard socket wrenches, extensions, some screwdrivers, some picks, and that's all pretty common. Although I have to say that this little 1/4-inch drive wrench with micro ratchet, very nice, very small, gets into a lot of tight places, which really helps. On this particular car, it's also the little bits that might make a difference. This T30 goes into a 1/4-inch drive, and you can get at different angles. Or you can put a 1/4-inch drive on your ratchet and use that to really fine-tune where you're going. So the little bits and bobs maybe has been the savior of this job, just so we can get all those damn torques off. Another important tool that I found useful was the crow's foot, and that's to release the high-pressure fuel fitting on the left-hand side of the engine. And of course, we can't forget, sometimes it's nice to have this slippery. All right, that concludes today's video, the part 2 of the series. And there were some disappointments that we uncovered during this process. We had some rusty bolts, a mouse nest in the V of the engine, and generally a fairly corroded V-section to this engine. That was a bit disappointing. We did have one small surprise, which was the intake valves were pretty clean. So we know the oil catch can in this application for this AJ126 engine is doing its job, which is nice because then we don't have to worry about cleaning the valves at this time. The rewards for this whole job are going to come in part 3, the next video installment. We'll be deleting the composer, cleaning up the engine, installing all the new metal parts, and really just gaining confidence in this particular engine and being able to then drive it with a bit more vigor without having to worry about the cooling system falling apart. All right, so look forward to the next one. And remember, my friends, drive well.